Back to my coffee. Okay, I just have to, you guys know I have to see if I can, I usually get a notification that tells me that I'm on so that I can then see who might be on here. All right, there we go. Awesome. So hopefully everybody's doing well, everybody's doing good. Sort of looks like things might be freezing with the stream, so maybe I'll just have to check my internet or figure that out. Been a exciting sort of uncovering or unveiling of life. We do know that like we have to go through these trying times, right? And the trying times are really setting us up for what's to happen in the future, like, and how do we handle sticky situations, because it's not necessarily easy to handle these sticky situations, right? Oftentimes, we get sick, we check out, it's too much, we can't do it, or we minimize the experience by not allowing ourselves to fully engage in the process of the experience. Why? Because it's too hard or too painful. And so, good morning, Joan. So oftentimes we try to run away, and there was something that someone had said about that we try to run away from pain. And I was like, is that true? Or do I typically try to allow myself to process the pain, right? And when I started to think about pain, I'm like, well, when it comes to emotional pain, mental pain or anguish, yeah, I allow myself to go through it. But what about physical pain? And I'm like, yeah, I try to run from it. It is true, because there are times when I'm experiencing physical pain and I'm all over the place. I'm bouncing from place to place, trying to find that place of comfortability. So I said, well, for individuals who may not process their emotional pain and anguish, that's probably what it feels like. And so perhaps they jump from place to place to place to place to place. And emotionally, or they jump from subject to subject, or whatever it is that they do to try to escape the mental anguish that they're going through. So, kind of like trying to fill the void or try to fill the space with something else so that they don't have to go through the pain, which is really sort of running away. And there's this common theme about running away from your problems, running away from your hurt, running away from all of the things that are going on in your life. And it's not that it's right, wrong, good, or bad. Really, it's not. It may be on the external, it hurts the people that you run away from, or it hurts that you check out, or it hurts them. But the reality is it hurting you? Right? At the end of the day, it's how is that supporting you or not supporting you? Some people will say, well, it does support me that I check out. And I'm like, so you're okay with just being alone and running away from everything and everybody? Like, that's okay for you? And the answer is typically, well, no, not really. So it really isn't working out for most people. Now, if it is, cool. But I'm going to say that, running away is just, it helps us to avoid the situation, or to change this, or say, I think that it's going to change. If I run over here, maybe things will be different. Maybe the circumstances will change. Maybe the issues will change. Maybe my mental state will be better. But what happens when you run, what happens when you go away, is your patterns follow you, because really we're looking at the internal world is what is shaping our external world. Our internal world is shaping our external world. So if we're running away and the patterns that we set are there, the patterns don't go away. They follow you. I know this to be true for myself. When I lived in India, I moved all the way across the world, total opposite. I mean, literally 12-hour difference. It's really literally almost on the opposite side of where I live. Okay. And started to see my patterns to resurface. And I was like, wait, what? Like, how did this get created halfway across the world? I thought it was going to change. Did it change? No. Why? Because I was the one creating the scenario, the situation, the circumstances, the conditions. It was me, and running away didn't change a damn thing. Was when I realized, okay, look at, if you try to run away from it, it's only going to follow you. It goes with you because it's you. You can't like leave. Maybe you could. I don't know if somebody out there can just like leave their body there and like put their spirits somewhere else and stay there. Then I mean, why would you have a body? It would be a body without a soul, right? It's like it works together, right, in tandem. And that's what I've been talking about, is the meshing between the spirit and the body. Now, the internal pain, the physical pain, you can't escape that either, right? It's almost like a prison that you're in. And that's the feeling. At least for me, I'm like, I'm in prison and I can't break free. I can't release this pain. Good morning, Patrick. Because we're confined to the body. We can't live outside the body, right? So we're trying to escape it. And if it's physical pain, what do? We take medicine, we try to numb it, we try to dull it out, nobody wants to live in pain and feel it. It's a very hard thing to do. Now, just recently when I was in extreme pain, and I was in very extreme pain, I allowed myself to just feel it. I thought, can I allow myself to just be with it and not run away from it, and I did for the longest time, but it was so bad it made me throw up. That's how extreme it got. The pain was so hard, my body just couldn't handle it no more. I literally puked. So there's too much pain sometimes, and sometimes we have to dull it out a little bit just so that we can get through it. But that doesn't mean that we get rid of it completely. I mean, you can no, you're never going to get rid of it completely, but you can numb it out completely if you want to, and you can push it down and deny that it's there completely if you choose to. That's totally a choice, right? It's up to you. These are merely suggestions, as you know. But I will say this, if you continue to do that, it's only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's going to over bubble. And it's going to be like the volcano, right? It might be slipping out a little at a time, and then eventually it erupts. It has to go somewhere. So why not practice and learn how to live with it? Why not learn, right, how to allow yourself to go through those emotions or those painful situations mentally, emotionally, physically? And if you need to numb it out, or if it is too much for you to handle, that you can minimize the pain just a little bit, but don't shut it off completely. Allow yourself to have just enough that you can handle. So it's like, well, how do I do this? Like, it's mental, or it's this, or it's that. Sometimes we have to redirect our mental energy into other things. Sometimes we have to redirect our emotional stuff into other things. The mental piece, if we thought about it, is very logical. So it's like, well, if there's a lot of mental and you're getting headaches and all that kind of stuff, it's like, do something that's going to minimize the mind from operating. What would that be? Well, I don't know, go get a massage, right? Or whatever it is that's going to distract you for just a little bit, not a whole lot, not completely entirely, not like I'm going to run away from this forever, but like I need a timeout. It's okay to take timeouts. I mean, it's okay to say you're going to run away, but I guarantee it's going to follow you. It is not going to leave you. I was just talking about this yesterday with my niece. We were talking about patterns, and how patterns, there's just some patterns that don't change in your life, and they're not going to. I have literally worked and worked and worked on certain patterns in my life, and tried to, and I said, maybe the pattern doesn't change, and maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is how we engage the pattern. How do we, from what perspective? If the pattern was a big spiral, at what angle should I approach it? I can approach it from different angles. The pattern's still the same, but the approach is different. Well, maybe I want to start in the middle of the spiral. Maybe I want to start in the middle. Maybe I want to start at the end and work my way in. Maybe, there's different ways and scenarios that you can engage the pattern, but maybe the pattern never changes. But it's in our engagement that changes. It's the way that we engage the pattern. It's the way that we engage what's happening. So there's certain things in our life that I don't know ever changes. Perhaps it does, and perhaps there's a way to do it. But I've practiced this my whole life. I've looked at my patterns. I've tried to reshape them, remold them, and they still seem to be common. But the way that I engage them has been different, and so I do get a different outcome. The pattern's the same, the engagement different, the outcome different. So with each engagement of the pattern, you may have a different outcome. If I was starting in the middle and working my way out, it's going to be different, right? Than if I started at the end and worked my way in. Right? Because things will get narrower, 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 and narrower. When if I'm working my way out, they're going to get bigger, 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 and expand. It's the same pattern. It looks different, it's shaped different, but it's the same thing. So we're merely changing the way that we engage the pattern. I mean, I feel like that's probably, and then there's patterns that perhaps do change. But it's kind of like the karmatic pattern that they talk about, or when we look at the family, they're like, well, karma can be cleared and karma can, well, I'm not saying it can't, and I'm not saying that patterns can't be cleared. I just don't know that when we're in this three-dimensional existence that that's the case. If someone has something where they're like, no, it's possible, I will try it. I will actually apply it to my life to see if experientially is this true. That's how I live my life, right? I take a concept. Someone will say, well, do this for 30 days and this is the result you'll get. I will do that thing exactly like they say for 30 days to see if I get that result. And if I don't get that result, I'm like, okay, maybe that worked for you, but doesn't work for everybody because it didn't work for me. And maybe there's a few select, whatever it is. But I've literally have engaged this for my whole life. Can we change patterns? And if so, how is it that we change those patterns? Hey, Betty. Morning. What allows us to shift that pattern? Now, there's just, like I said, there's patterns that are never going to change. And then there's certain things that we do. We're creatures of habit. So do our habits change? We can change habits. I did read this book. It's The World's Greatest Salesman in the World. I don't know if you guys have ever done that, but I literally did the 300-day challenge with friends of mine. And we did a call-in every night, and we read it every night. We would read from that, and we did it the way it was supposed to do. And it really was all about how do you shift and change your habits. It's of course, it's consistency and persistence, right? If you're consistent and persistent and have determination, we do see that things will shift in your life. But there's set patterns in your life that don't ever shift, and that's what I've learned. Or there's certain conversations in your mind that never change. Like, for instance, the fact that I feel like I have abandonment issues, right? And the abandonment issues will resurface in different scenarios with different people. The difference between me then and me now is not that the pattern has changed or the mental psyche in my brain is different. The difference is how I engage the situation when it arises. That's what's changed. That's the pattern that I change, and it's called habit. It's called self-awareness. It's recognition of the self. It's saying, oh yeah, I see that pattern surfacing again. I can feel it. I know what it feels like. I've identified it. I'm very clear about it. And when it comes up, I understand the process I need to go through to serve me to move from that into something powerful. It's almost like the rejection that I talked about. Living with rejection, I'm excited to get rejected. Why? Because at the rejection, I move into self-acceptance. That self-acceptance motivates me to move forward in life, to hit my goals, to get to the gym. It actually ignites that gym fire in me, kind of, where I get to the gym and I start working out, and I use a lot of that energy to pump the iron, to release that energy, to be with it. And I actually befriend it. I come friends with it. And I love it because it's the fuel that's igniting this motivation, determination. And so rejection for me isn't a scary thing. Could be like the abandonment thing. So the abandonment still shows up. It's not that it goes away. So again, our mental thoughts, when the pain is coming up, the mental anguish, it's not necessarily getting rid of it. It's how do you engage it, maybe differently. And then you practice that engagement, and then you find ways that'll work for you. So whatever, it could even be anger, it could be frustration, it could be fear, it could be whatever it is for you. And we call these the dark emotions. Not negative or positive, more like shadow side. And most people, so they didn't teach us, right? I've talked about this, but they didn't teach us how to live in the shadows. They didn't teach us how to, deal with the shadow side of ourselves. They merely just said, if you're mad or angry, go stand in the corner. No, you need to smile. You need to behave. You need to be happy. You can't be sad. Don't cry. Dry your eye. They gave us all of these things to sort of deny the fact that we were going through these feelings or emotions. It wasn't like, okay, you're having a dark emotion. What's on the other side of that for you? How do you think you would engage it? How do you think that you would live with it? How do you think that you would love it? How do you think that you would hug it or hold it, or perhaps figure out how you want to maneuver through it or talk to it or whatever it is? Nobody taught us that. And if they taught you that, you're very fortunate. But I can say that most of the planet, no, I can't say most of the planet, but I just know that in the US, it's not typically that way, right? It's an individualistic, figure it out, no crying, respect, happiness, joy. Everybody should be happy and smiling. But that's not true all the time. That's not reality. That's not the reality the way we're experiencing it, at least. We know that everybody suffers. So how do we get past it? How do we work with it? How do we engage it? How do we maneuver through it? Good morning. If you're on here, please say good morning. If I don't say good morning to you, it's because I don't say good morning, Rick. And so the mental pain. So again, pain, rather than running from it, it's like, how do we live with it and how do we maneuver through it? Now, mental pain and emotional pain, those two things, it can either be hard or easy for an individual because they're non-tangibles. A physical pain is a tangible thing. It's something we experience in the body that's tangible. The organs or something in the body's not operating properly, and it's the material world that's giving us a cue, right? To our brain, right? It fires off whatever our neural senses and whatever it is that happens in the body. And so our body has some sort of stimulation happening and we can feel it. And it's either pressure or it's sharp or it's whatever it is, and we experience this physical pain. We know that with that, we could go to the hospital and then they can do a surgery, or they're giving you pain medications or whatever it is, right, to manage the pain and this and that and the other. People get backache, all this stuff happens, and they manage the pain through medications. The emotional mental pains, they've tried to, in the pharmaceutical world, give pills to individuals. And I personally, I'm not going to tell people whether they should or not because I'm not a doctor, but I will say that I don't typically engage in medications. Why? Because I hear all of the side effects that go with taking medications, and I'm not willing to suffer from the side effects plus what I'm having to begin with. So for me, all of that is a no-go. Now, some people are on medications. It doesn't make you right, wrong, good, or bad. You do what you need to do for yourself. But I will say this, the mental piece and the emotional piece could be a little more challenging for people because they're not tangible. It's not really something that you can put your finger on. It's not something that can just be extracted. We can't just go in and extract the mental anguish that you're going through. There's no way to just go there like in Harry Potter and pull the thought out and put it somewhere. It's with you. It's gonna be there with you. It exists inside of you. So it's gonna show up and it's gonna resurface, and it does impact our relationships and how we see the material world around us. It reflects outward. And so understanding how to support yourself through that pain is what's important. How do we transmute, transfigure, transform, coagulate? How do we go through the spiritual alchemic process of our emotions so that we can get to the other end of that? Because there's a polarity, there's a sort of a duality happening. It's really not a duality, but it's experienced as a duality. So we're going to speak in terms of duality because that's the easiest way to describe it. At one end of your pain, on the other end is a light emotion, or an emotion that can balance the equation for you. So if you said, okay, I have fear. Fear is the dark emotion. It's one part of the equation, but on the other end there's this other sort of energy source that's there to balance out the equation. It's finding your way to that other emotion. It's finding your way to the emotion that will balance your equation. That's another way to describe it. So how do you balance the equation, right? A good movie, you know me, I like to reference movies because sometimes I think it at least helps people process what I'm talking about. In The Matrix, the movie, if you've watched it, they talk about the anomaly and the equation. And the architect is confused because the architect who created the Matrix said that choice had to be part of the equation, but he didn't understand choice. He didn't want people to have choice. He wanted everything to be determined and without choice. And choice was, people would reject the Matrix if there wasn't choice, right? So they say you have a choice. You can do this or you could do that. So in the equation, Neo had the choice, and the choice was the balance to the equation. So we're learning to balance the equation in our own mental matrix, right? If we saw our brain as this matrix, as this mental matrix, where we had maybe some Agent Smiths and we had some Neos going on in there, and Agent Smith was overtaking our system, right? Good morning, Lion of Judah. Let's just say like Agent Smith was fear, and fear was overtaking our emotional states, right? Like fear was just drowning out everything else. We still have within us, it's built within us, the opposite side of the equation, the anomaly to that equation that can balance it out. But notice that you have to accept it fully. You can't accept the fear partially. You've got to fully go through the spectrum of fear in order to experience what's on the opposite end of that. And it's really not the opposite. It's part of the same continuum, but it's like it's pair. So if we thought about, when I was talking about yesterday, when we talk about the quantum world and we talk about the physical world, right? They seem very different from each other. We're merely just trying to balance the equation between the both. They both equally exist, but how do we engage both of them from a place of balance? Sometimes we have to go through one completely to come to the other. So notice the Oracle is really Neo's opposite more than Agent Smith, but Agent Smith was the fear that embodied the Oracle that came to Neo that balanced the equation. So again, looking at your emotion, fear has a partner. Okay? And the partner would be, for me, would be love. And so if I go through the fear to find my way to love, then I can balance out my fear with love, and I can learn how to work with both. And as fear arises and I move through it, I can be excited about it because I know on the other end of that, when I go through it, is love and a warm hug and an embrace. So if we looked at the rejection, like I was talking about, or the abandonment, when I allow myself to go through that emotional process completely, at the other side of the equation, to balance it, is self-acceptance. So if you thought of it from that perspective, and you knew that going through these dark emotions and moving through the dark emotions, at the other end of it was this beautiful, magical thing waiting for you. Most people don't get there because they're afraid that it's just going to spiral into this and never come out. But I can tell you this, people have had their greatest transformations by literally breaking down completely. So, like, for instance, you'll have, there's a story, but Katie Katie. Oh, I always get her name incorrect, so I'm sorry, but if I get it wrong. But if you guys know what I'm talking about, great. But her story goes that she was mentally going crazy. She ended up like at her lowest of the low. And her lowest of the low, I think she was naked on the floor. I could be making this up. I don't know, but we're gonna say that this is kind of how the story goes. She literally goes down into oblivion, completely naked on the floor, crazy, right? She feels like she's batshit crazy. And all of a sudden she starts to laugh. She has nowhere else to go. She's literally completely enamored, or completely embodied in, I don't know if it was fear or whatever it was for her. It was a dark emotion, depression, sadness, completely. And she just went through it, and her whole body down. And then she started to laugh. She had nowhere else to go, so she started to laugh. And there was something that clicked in her. And she became a whole new person. And in that, she wrote a book. And in that, she started to teach people how to work through those dark emotions, because she realized that once she allowed herself to surrender and go through it, good morning, Alpha Mike, and allowed herself to completely drop into that state, on the other end of it was the most magical moment, which was happiness and joy. Now, going through it, is it easy? No. I would never minimize someone's experience through some kind of mental anguish or emotional anguish. It's very real for the individual who's actually going through it. And so as they go through the process, though, if they allow themselves to go through it, and they are allow themselves to engage it without stopping the process, and let their self experience what's on the other end of that when it's done. This too shall pass. Our emotional states, they're all over the place, right? They're not going to stay the same. They move. They're dynamic. It's not a static thing. Emotions are not static. They're dynamic. They come and they go. It's like a wave. Yeah, Rick. Cheers to you. So I want to continue on this journey through these emotions, because I think it is important, and I think this is something I think more and more people are talking about it. At least I see more people sharing and talking about their the anguish that they go through, but really supporting you guys and understanding how to allow yourself to go through the process, and understanding that on one spectrum, even if you're experiencing a dark emotion, there's always something there to balance the equation. You always have the opposite end of that, which is, again, not opposite. It's part of the same continuum. They're interconnected. But if we're on one extreme, and we're not experiencing the other, we don't have the other part of the equation balanced for ourselves. In other words, we're not balanced. And it's not because there's anything wrong with you. You're perfectly perfect the way you are. There's nothing wrong with you. People will say, oh, well, you have this or you have that, or I don't even like clinical diagnosis. I'm not going to say anything about the medical field, whatever. They've done whatever they need to do to try to support people. But the reality is there's nothing wrong with you. It's a broken system that doesn't know how to support people through the shadow emotions. That's really what we're experiencing. People don't want to go there. People don't want to experience the uncomfortable. But we can't get to comfortable if we're experiencing, again, how do we be comfortable? We wouldn't even know what comfortable was if we didn't have uncomfortable. So that allows us to shift and change and say, oh, okay, there's this uncomfortable and there's this comfortable. The uncomfortable being the shadow emotions, right? But how do you experience the comfortable if you're not allowing yourself to go through the uncomfortable? And sometimes we have to do that. Again, looking at so here's what I'll say. Look at your dark emotions that might be arising in you, the painful things that are coming up, perhaps mentally and emotionally. If there's physical stuff, it could be a result of the mental and emotional. Maybe not, but it might. So if you're looking at the mental and the emotional, write them down, really be with them, and then ask yourself, what is the opposite of that for me? So if it was, again, fear, what's the opposite of fear for me? That is your balanced equation. The light emotions, or the emotions that are comfortable, are feel good, are your balanced equation. They're your neos, okay? You got your Agent Smiths and you got your neos. And so you're looking at your Agent Smiths and you're like, okay, what neo do I need to put here to balance my equation? And then you just go through and then you say, okay, now writing it down is one thing, but experiencing it is another. So if I'm experiencing fear, how do I go through the fear to then come out and experience the opposite of that? Which is really not the opposite. It's really its pair. We would rather call it its pair than its opposite. How do I experience the pair? And then when you experience the pair together, you can do a cosmic dance between the two. And as fear arises, you can create a process to move you into the emotions that feel good. So it could be, how do I balance my equation? If you were a mathematical equation and you were a little bit off, what is it that I get to do to balance the equation? Well, I'm way over here in depression. Okay, so what is the balance to balance out the equation of depression? Oh, well, it's joy and happiness. Okay, so how do I go through the depression to come out over here to joy and happiness? Because they're part of the same thing. It's just it balances the equation for you. Oh, well, I can, cry, 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 cry until I have no more tears to cry. And once I let it all out, I automatically feel the spark of joy or inspiration. But I went through the process to get there. Okay. So I hope that this helps. I want to continue going through it. I think it's a very important topic. It's it's really, really, really important. I feel we're at a time where people get to really allow themselves and honor themselves through emotional states that weren't accepted in the past. Okay. So, again, I hope this helps. Cheers to you guys. Salud. Have the best day ever. And of course, I will be seeing you guys tomorrow. And again, thank you for your prayers. I'm still feeling phenomenal, so that's a good thing. Very honored and proud to be a part of this group of individuals. and your prayers are so powerful. So thank you very much. Namaste. And I will see you guys tomorrow.